Sound check, sound check. Ryan, give me some sound.
Yep, can you hear me?
All right, we'll just let our viewers confirm the sound is good. We have a few guys who are always on here right in the beginning. They're my sound check guys.
I believe it.
All right, so sound is good. Welcome everybody to Can Hammer TV. This is October 5th. We are in the depths of the second wave, and there's no games on the horizon for me anyway. So we are here with Tactica episode 40, and tonight I have special guest Ryan Snyder joining me. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
For you guys who don't know, Ryan Snyder is one of the top players right now. Now, granted, there's not a lot of stuff going on, but there's some big tournaments coming up recently. And so Ryan came in third recently at the Iron Halo, which was, how many people was there, Ryan?
There's like 110 around there, 109, something like that.
So even at the peak of tournament season, that is a large event. So Ryan came in third playing Custodes, which is always cool to see. And so he's graciously joined us tonight to talk about his experience, about what he feels is strong right now in Custodes. And also, since it literally just came out, we may sneak in a little bit of discussion there about all the marine, I'll call it, craziness that just dropped today. Well, it dropped on Saturday because all the previewers got their videos and stuff out, and then the big FAQs that kind of dropped today, which was surprisingly swift, really swift.
Yeah, it's good. I think they're getting better. They're getting better every day at it.
Okay, I thought you meant the Marines are getting better every day.
Oh no, I mean the GW. I think that I think they are really putting forth an effort to fact things fast, because I think they they got the platform for it now, so
Yeah.
why not?
Yeah, and like technically the book is not actually out yet, and they already released all these FAQs,
Which is great.
in response to all the previewers releasing
Okay.
basically releasing the books out. I mean, there's PDFs already of the books out there, so
It's awesome.
yeah. All right, so Ryan, why don't you tell us first of all a little bit about your Custodes experience? I know you're one of us, been playing Custodes for a long time, even when they weren't good. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background there?
Yeah, so I got back into 40K after being out of it for a while, mostly due to Custodes, honestly. I meandered into my local game shop one day, and I saw the Virtus Praetors, and that was enough to get me back in the hobby pretty much. And
Nice.
yeah, so I did like I just quickly built basically an all bike army. This was kind of like this was, I want to say late eighth, not late eighth. It was like mid to late eighth, but it was like right when everyone had figured out how to basically beat the all bike army, and so like night spam and everything, all the flat two stuff.
Yep.
So I just got my teeth kicked in for like 3 tournaments, and I kind of dropped out for a little bit, and then just did some more research, and then got back into it with pretty much an all tank army. The reason for that for me was I valued the long range shooting. I always played very kinetically. I like to play fast and strong, but just the way the meta was, I figured the best way to kind of counter was to be able to hit back and hit back hard, off that first turn. And so I gravitated more towards that style of play. And then once ninth started developing, I started easing back more and including Virtus Praetor. So now it's kind of a hybrid between kind of those two emphases that I kind of started out on. So that's kind of my experience in a nutshell, I guess, getting to where I am now.
All right. So tell us what you brought to the Iron Halo, your list.
Yeah, so my list, I have a jet bike captain with the Arc Aquilus, Slayer of the Unclean, Emperor's Companion as his warlord trait, salvo launcher. And the reason why I like that so much is just the the reroll damage rolls, and then the Slayer of the Unclean with that 6, and then the reroll to wounds with the Interceptor Lance and the Salvo Launcher against vehicles. That 6 comes up a lot. That 6 comes up a lot. I think it happened twice in that tournament to my memory, and in a substantial way. So he was doing like 8 or 9 damage, with his Salvo Launcher on a vehicle, which is really, really nice. Then I have an Alaris captain who's got a Castellan Axe. He's a Lock Warden for his Warlord trait for the 10,000 heroes, and then Eagle's Eye for his relic. And then I deep strike him pretty much every time with a unit of 3 guard with Pyrothite Spears, which was a change that I made from MonkeyCon. I started with the shield and sword guys, but I couldn't see much of a difference. Like more often than not, when they got targeted, they died. Usually when someone was trying to kill them, they had enough firepower to kill them, or it was something like mortal wound span. That could just shoot through that invul. So I figured it would be better to have a little bit more offensive punch and something that could possibly, snipe some of those psychic characters if they left that backfield window open.
Yeah.
With that D6 damage and stuff. So I made that minor change, and then this list I have 2 units of Virtus Praetors, a 3 and a 4, and that was a minor change that I made. Also, was that I used to have a unit of 7 to kind of maximize the CP economy, but I found having 2 units is better just for objective holding, and the stooping dive. So I really started exploring once 9th came out and we got CP finally. Stooping dive became like a thing that I really wanted to explore using tactically and figuring out what's the best way to do that. And with the list that I have, I have 2 Caladius tanks in the list, and then an Aries gunship basically is the rest of the list. So I was struggling a little bit to kind of fence the alpha strikes, so like Blood Angels and Raven Guard Sense and White Scar Sense. Having only 2 tanks and 1 unit of Virtus Praetors, a lot of times, that deep strike move could get at my Virtus Praetors, which were more vulnerable, not having the -2, and obviously depending on what kind of unit was coming in, it could be a problem. Because then moving from, if he gets that charge off, usually, they're close enough to the tanks that he's going to pile into a tank or something, and then I'm shooting at combat. It's a big deal. So
yeah.
So with that splitting the units, I can fence now with a 3-man unit of Virtus Praetors, and then have that 4-man unit behind it. So even if that 3-man unit gets charged, it's sort of the third piece in the fence. I can stooping dive and hit that unit first and hard, so that it's kind of out of action or hurt enough that it's not going to be able to kill those Praetors and move on to something else. So that's kind of my list, I guess. I already kind of went into the tactics there.
Yeah, and your 2 tanks, one was the storm cannons and one was the accelerators, right?
Yeah, yep, the twin heavy blaze, not actually a storm cannon.
Heavy blaze. Sorry,
heavy blaze cannon. Yeah, I get confused about that sometimes too, but I try to keep it straight because it gets confusing for people. But yeah, the twin Iliastus, and the reason why I like to have both is because I value the Iliastus for its Primaris killing power. Having that flat 2 damage is really nice when you're shooting at those 5-man pickup units. Especially now with TAC Marines and all those units going up to 2 wounds. I don't think you're going to see much of for 1 wound models in Space Marine armies anymore. And then I like the blaze cannons. I really like the blaze cannons having that flat 4 damage, or flat 3 plus D3 damage. But you're looking at generally 4 damage, or guaranteed 4 damage, but possibly 5 or 6 damage. With each shot is just, and then reroll wounds on vehicles is just so consistent, and that's one of the hallmarks of Adeptus Custodes play, which I value. That's one of the reasons why I've stayed with Custodes, because I like consistent play. I like to have a sense of I know what's going to happen.
You know what your things can do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
guess my issue with the blaze on the Custodes has always been that it's not enough shots. But I guess you also got the Aries, you got the captain with the crazy buffed up salvo launcher. So
yeah,
you're not relying entirely on that Custodes
right.
to kill
And,
things.
and all my Virtus Predators have salvo launchers as well.
Yeah,
So I do find myself being kind of a black sheep in kind of the Custodes community, because when I was advocating, because I've been advocating for this kind of style of play pretty much through Ace, pretty much through Iron Hands. It was lots of high damage, high AP shots that can double as Primaris killing weapons as well. That units are small enough so they can use terrain to hide behind, so they're not getting blasted off the board by Leviathans just walking up the middle. Um, and especially now with the blast rules, to me, it's just there's no reason to take Hurricane Bolters anymore. Being able to put out flat 3 shots, strength 7, -1, D3 damage. I can't justify taking anything else anymore. I used to have some sense. Like I used to field one by captain in my all tank list with a Hurricane Bolter just to deep strike him, and then he'd go after like those 10-man units that call this the Loyal
yeah,
32 or something. He'd be convenient to go to town that way. But with the vehicle heavy meta and knights, knights are still a gatekeeper army as much as people are saying they're bad now because of the terrain. The more terrain, I think they're still a very strong gatekeeper army.
yeah,
And a lot of tournaments, I don't know if a lot of tournaments will ever catch up. There was a lot of, like I did a lot of GTs this last year, and there was a lot of GTs that had extremely sparse terrain, like a majority of the tables, and just coming up with enough terrain to fulfill 9th edition criteria. I think for a lot of people, a lot of tournaments is kind of out of their reach, even within
yeah,
a year's time. So I think Knights are still a really strong gatekeeping army. So having all that high damage, high AP stuff to me is just it's smart. If you can get that first turn, usually you can kill a knight. With my list, I've killed a Castellan turn 1. I'm usually a couple of I went first on AdMech both times at Iron Halo, and just did a lot of damage.
yeah.
Picked up a couple of armigers once, plus the mortar tank. I picked up like 4 robots and a flyer, plus some other damage. I mean, it's a really good alpha striking list, and it's nice because it can hide.
Yeah, yeah,
And so AdMech struggles to hide, because they just got so many vehicles and there's so much. They really struggle to use the terrain. They're all kind of trying to hide, center around the aura buffs and stuff. So it's hard for them to do that. But with Custodes having such a high ballistic skill, we can afford to kind of spread our tanks out a little bit, put units here and there. And then what I really like about this particular list and style of play is it's fast enough then to coalesce. So so if I play 2 wings or like a center and a wing,
you could just come back into the middle.
exactly, and I need in my, depending on what my enemy does, I can push to one side or the other and not feel like my army is divided or being able to be picked off piecemeal, kind of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Okay, and then you threw onto that the Aries. So what?
Yeah.
We heard last week or the week before from Carlos Kaiser about his experiences with the Aries.
I saw that.
Yeah. What are your experiences with it? Pretty similar, or?
Oh yeah, I was pumped because I've been in some Facebook groups and stuff, just like trying to get people on board with this style of play, because I've had a good amount of success with it even during 8th edition. I win about 50% of my game. I'm winning 50% of my games with Iron Hands, which I thought was pretty good for that time, especially with the way the Custodes meta was, and a lot of it had to do with the fact that I had the Aries gunship that could just survive, even without the strats. Usually I could survive at least 2 turns, and it wasn't great for picking up Leviathans per se, but flat 6 plus D3 damage, even at -1/2 is still, 4 damage.
Yeah.
You roll a 6. But the fact that you can get 3 shots of that, it did create a little bit more of a window for me, I think, than other Custodes players at the time to kind of go toe to toe with Iron Hands. And then the fact that I could pretty much hide the rest of my army and then maneuver on objectives, later in the game with more consistency with a 14-inch move versus a 6 plus D6-inch move. I think I just had some advantages that way, and then the fact that I think also that I just really exclusively played it. So that was kind of one of the things I decided when I got back into it was I was only going to play one army until I got really good at it.
Yeah.
So I think that helped me a lot just because I really could just tighten every little screw and figure out every little maneuver and thing that I needed to do to compete. So I had a lot of cagey games with Iron Hands that I would win by like 1 or 2 points, that like against mediocre players and stuff. But the Aries definitely took a center role in that because whether it was a fire magnet or whether it was doing some serious damage to the vehicles, it's really good. It was really good against the repulsor executioner spam stuff.
Yeah.
I played a lot of lists like that where I would get first turn and be able to take out 2 executioners, between the Aries and the 3 Caladius tanks and the 3 Palace Grab that I had.
Yeah.
A lot of Iron Hands lists that centered around that wouldn't be able to recover from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so I kind of played into those odds. I love the Aries for the fire bombs. A lot of armies were struggling against plague bearers.
Yeah.
That was like a big thing during that time. Being able to just 20 mortal wounds, dice on a big 30 man unit where there's no hit modifiers.
Yeah. It's nice.
So like when they're getting like -2 buffs and stuff, and you can drop that and kill enough of them so they're down below that 20 man mark, and then you're not -1 or -2 then. Some of that firepower, the rest of that firepower can kind of get through a little bit more consistently. But as far as 9th edition, it's still, it just got so much better. It just got crazy good between Grim Responsibility, Vengeance the Machine Spirit, Emperor's Auspice, and Indomitable Engines. Like those 4 strats, to me, get their most value on the Ares gunship, like by 4. Like the ability to shoot the Magna Blaze Cannon, like at full profile on death.
Yeah, it's awesome.
You're usually getting shot at by a tank,
Yeah.
It's great, it's really good. I played a game against Death Watch at MonkeyCon where the Death Watch just alpha struck hard. So much damage to the Ares gunship. It kind of survived, like he had a Leviathan and everything, and the Ares, he had a repulsor executioner, and they ended up killing each other like turn 2, which was pretty epic. Being able to shoot that last shot, but there's ironically that hasn't been one I've used a lot because it's surviving a lot more now.
Yeah.
Obviously with the other 3 strats, it's really able to just take all knocks, and usually people are shooting other stuff at that once they kind of figure that out, if they're a good player, if they're experienced, if they know what they're doing. A lot of guys will go, that's not going to hold on any objectives. These guys are. I'm going to shoot these tanks with my eradicators or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's a thing. And I had a match where I wish I would have used. I wish like I was so that was kind of the down. I was so stuck in the Aries that I didn't think to use the Vengeance and Machine Spirit on my Caladius tank.
Yeah.
So you pop my Caladius tank, and I should have just Vengeance and Machine Spirit and shot at one of his other units of Eradicators and probably killed 2 or 3 of them. Maybe not 3 of them, but good chance of killing 2 of them with 8 shots at strength 7, -3, flat 2. So it's picked up more Lehman Russ tanks than I care to remember.
Poor Lehman Russ.
And it's killed more AdMech tanks than I can hope to remember. More Eldar tanks. It's very consistent. That strength 14 is nice. Anything that's not toughness 8 is winning on 2s.
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to be seeing a lot of speeders and ATV bikes and It's going to be a lot of those things running around very soon.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, it's great for killing that stuff, especially if they're in units. Like even like some of the marine stuff, like the Primaris bikers. It's
Yep.
nice for those kind of units just to pick that whole unit up. I mean, it has that potential to do that fairly easily. Uh, yeah, man, it's gonna be interesting to see how dominant the Eradicators are, especially now that they can go up to 6 models in a unit,
Yeah.
and they can take like a multi-melt in there, and like it's just it's
Crazy
just
damage.
it's just crazy damage, and I think what will end up happening is deep striking it more, or deep striking it at all. I've never deep struck it yet, but I've been looking into that. I was looking into that more today, just figuring out what the CP cost of deep striking that and one of the Caladius tanks would be as kind of a counter to that.
That's a lot of CP, man.
It is. It's like 5 CP to do that, and it's worth it if you can counter that Alpha Strike, because there's a lot of lists that would pretty much rely solely on that. That, and then maybe Inceptors, to beat an army like the list that I play, because it's so fast. It's got so much high AP damage stuff. Like, they really do need to like get that Alpha Strike in and kind of get that killer blow, in order to keep their objective holding units alive. The remainder of the game, and to keep stay ahead in primaries and stuff. And so yeah, I mean, I think that that, like I said, that and using Vengeance of Machine Spirit, I think is kind of probably our best counter with this particular list. If you play Aries heavy, being able to kind of get that economy down of like remembering, okay, if he's going to shoot me with 1 unit of Eradicators here, I need to shoot that unit of Eradicators over there if it dies, to try to kind of erode some of that firepower. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, yeah. So your list is pretty. It really doubles down on, obviously, on vehicle killing, but also doubles down on speed. I mean, you got 2 bike units, you got the Aries, you've got 2 Caladius tanks, no foot sloggers in there.
Well, I do. There's the Alaris.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's the one dude and his three Guardian boys, and then so you met your match one time at the Iron Halo. So what is it that got you, and was that just was it just something that was just a bad matchup for your list and you just happened to run into it, or?
I do have bad matchups with Knights. Like Triple Thermal Knights is a really bad matchup, but ironically, it was not a Triple Thermal Knight army. It was actually a Knight army I should have beat pretty easily. But I misdeployed and I got complacent. So it was it was the 3rd match of the day, and I ended up on a table with like 0 terrain. He ended up going first, but just the possibility of him going first kind of had me trying to like use every piece of terrain possible. And it was one of the missions that was the with the 9-inch bubble in the center and the quarters.
Yeah.
And and I've been playing like kind of an asymmetric spin like maneuver the whole like the previous 2 games, and I'd pretty much been using that consistently. On some of those where the objectives are kind of either diamond or where you're moving from your deployment zone to like kind of the flank, and then sort of just widening those fire angles. And so I deployed my Virtus Praetors way up on the line and a little bit deep. And he had a Gallant with Strider, like Land Strider and everything.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because one of the first games I played with my Virtus Praetors, I played against a Knight list, and he did the move. He got me with that first turn charge and everything. And I should have known, I should have known that he could possibly do that, but I was zonked, a little bit zonked, and just like I said, just was kind of like underestimated him. I mean, he had some good shooting. He had a thermal Knight with a Avenger, and he had a second one with a combat weapon and Avenger, and he had 3 armigers, 2 of which were the grab ones. So like I was respecting the shooting, and I just kind of respected that shooting too much and deployed this unit way too far up and too much to the right. and he was able to get a first turn charge off onto that unit of bikes. Now, he only killed 2 of the bikes,
Yeah.
which wasn't bad, but because his gallant covered so much distance, I was forced to basically shoot everything in the gallant that turn 1, which kind of was bad for me because my army is, when shooting knights, is designed to just try to trigger that ion shield and then shoot at the other knight.
Yeah.
Pick up the armigers first, and I wasn't able to do that. So the fact that I kind of got alpha struck, and then I wasn't able to do, I really had to sink everything into that, and he, of course, rolled like 70% for ups. Yeah. So I was just like, God, this is not going good, and so he really kind of snatched the momentum from me, and it was just really, really a hard hike from there. He, like I said, he only killed 2 bikes, but that meant 4 salvo launchers weren't shooting at him. I had to fall back with the bikes to shoot everything into the night because I knew he would just fall back and charge me anyways.
Yeah.
So basically that's what I did. I fell back with a 2. I shot everything pretty much into that, except for some things into the 2 grav, or one of the grav. So I shot the Aries gunship, which survives on 2 wounds. That's the thing. Like, he shot pretty much everything into the Aries. Aries survives with 2 wounds, which I was happy about. That would have been it for me if the Aries had died turn 1 too. That would have just been insult to injury,
Yeah.
But rolled really hot on his thermal cannon rolls. He just, the grab was deadly. It was just, it was not a good start for me, and I was really surprised to see how many points I did manage to score. Just because, like I said, he threw me off balance right off the bat, and it was just kind of a dogfight from there. And it was pretty much just because I botched the deployment. If I would have just put those vertesprators like 6 inches to the left, I would have been fine. But
yeah.
You live and you learn, man.
Word to the wise out there: knights can still put a hurt on us, so you can't underestimate those knights.
Yeah. Yep. Which I think it turned out for me though, because I probably would have ended up with a harder matchups the next day over.
Yeah.
So it would have been in question then at that point, had I won that game, whether or not I would have went 5-1. I think my odds of going 4-2 would have definitely been a little bit harder, or it would have been harder for me to get to 5-1. But yes, it was a good lesson to learn, and yes, the Knights can still put the hurt on. There's still a lot of good knight play out there, and you got to respect the thermal cannon. You got to respect the Avenger Gatling cannons. You got to respect the Grav armigers. I mean, they flat 4 damage on anything with a 3-up save. It's deadly, man. It's neg 4, so you can't ignore neg 1, neg 2 like you can on the Avengers.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see more of those armigers out there, just because there's so much out there now that can ignore the neg 1, neg 2.
Yeah.
That I think you're going to see just more plasma. You're going to see more inceptors. You're going to see more eradicators. You're going to see just things that are neg 3, neg 4, and they're going to just make that strat kind of useless. Which is the game. That's the point, right? You're just constantly adapting and trying to figure out the next step, getting better.
Okay, so that takes us on to next step for you. Do you have a tournament coming up? Are you making any changes to your list?
I'm probably not gonna make any changes. I like to play a list. I like to play a list like as many tournaments as it's successful. I've played 3 lists now in 9th, and I made more minor adjustments from my first one. My first list I played very similarly to my 8th edition list, where I had 2 dreadnoughts, all tanks, and I like the Talamon. I know the Talamon's a big hero in the Deathless Custodes community, but the only way I play him is deep striking him, and and I looked at the kind of the economy of that, and I really kind of shied away from it because my secondaries, I build my secondaries on consistency. So I always take line breaker, and I always take grind them down for my secondaries. And what usually I'm ending up doing is I'm sending that I'm sending that guard unit with an Alaris cap, the Alaris cap into behind enemy lines. And as just infantry models, they can be very inconspicuous.
Yep.
It can be ignored, especially with a big Aries gunship and a bunch of Praetors flying up the field with tanks and stuff right in front of them. A lot of times people it's an army that can really pressure hard and fast up the center with a lot of firepower and a lot of combat ability. That makes for Adeptus Custodes, infantry that's not a threat either or something, But
Yep.
it makes it inconspicuous to a lot of players, which then allows me then to sink them easy, get them, getting a couple of easy kills, off those backfield objective holder units, or just it's enough of a threat to cause kind of a commotion without a full redirect, and so I mean, it's kind of a balanced blade. The Telemon was kind of easy to just plop down and go, yep, here it is. But I had some really tough games where terrain was used against me with the Telemon, which made it an issue, especially with deep striking. Infantry units could get away from the Telemon.
Yep.
They're on depending what the terrain is like. So he was limited in that way, and then. He's just such a target at 295 points. I'm losing a turn of shooting, by putting him in deep strike. And then when he does kind of drop on the deck, a lot of people will kind of deploy away from him. So he ends up just kind of being a gun rock still. Okay, so now he's picking up secondary points a little bit, but there's just less points efficiency spending that on him as opposed to spending it on something that's going to alpha strike a little bit harder, like 3 Pyrethite spears do. I mean, a little bit harder, I guess, in the sense of because I always play the fist plus the storm cannon.
Yeah.
So a little bit, the 3 Pyrethite spears is a little bit more, statistically a little bit more damage. And I can use, R2 attack munitions with the Pyrethite spears to get 2d6 take the highest. So that's kind of nice, but I honestly found I had a really tough matchup against the Custodes. Ironically, that was
Yeah.
one of the toughest lists to play with this army is the Custodes.
The mirror. Yep.
Yeah. Because with all the 4-up invulnerable saves in the small units, a lot of times people just they just eat up that. I have I have a good volume of high damage shots, but they're between the good and vulnerable saves and the smaller unit sizes that can hide.
Yep.
I lose a lot of efficiency, and then you start going in the combat. Generally I'm outnumbered, and those numbers can quickly turn in my opponent's favor.
Yeah. Out of interest, how much mirrors have you faced in tournaments? Because I think initially we all thought that everybody was going to be playing Custodes and mirror would be everywhere, but things really, I mean, a lot of us haven't been to big tournaments, granted, but I don't think it is quite as prevalent as we thought it would be, that everybody was just going to be playing Custodes.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, I haven't noticed too much of a change. I had one mirror match back in 8th where he had an Orion gunship, and then he had a Caladius and 2 Palace Grab, and I actually won that one pretty soundly just because I had better firepower. So he had enough tanks that my anti-tank stuff wasn't getting wasted.
Yeah.
And he just had, because I had all tanks, he had less tank firepower. I just kind of had an advantage over him in that, so I kind of won the firefight basically. And then what infantry he did have, I just could tunnel everything.
Yeah.
That way. And then I kited him really good too. So when I played all tanks, it was really easy to kite armies like Footstodes because just catch anything,
Yeah.
But 9th edition is a little bit different. So I played Aaron Cook. He played a really kind of meta Custodes list with kind of the Telemon as the center, and then the Alaris bomb, the Vexilla, a bunch of infantry. An officiate, Vindicator. What did he choose? He chose a Eversor actually.
Yep.
And then before that, I played a guy at a GT who played a similar list as well. I think he didn't have. I can't remember exactly what he had, but there's a lot of infantry, big Aries bomb,
Yeah.
kind of standard custode stuff. And I lost both of those games. So both of those games I lost. A lot of it was just, I think, overconfidence on my part. I was. I think for both games, I was at the time I was the number one ranked Custodes player on the ITC.
Mm-hmm.
So I was honestly overconfident. I got a little cocky. I made some really stupid mistakes, that they were smart enough to take advantage of, which was good because it kept me humble, taught me some respect, of like, it's really easy to get complacent when you get towards the top. It really gets easy to make those stupid mistakes because you think you've done it right so many times. So those were good losing experiences for me. So that when I hope to face Custodes again, I'll do better. But there was a sizable difference in Custodes players from Monkey Con to Iron Halo.
Yeah.
Monkey Con, there was like 12 or 15. Like there was like more than 10 Custodes players, and then Iron Halo, I don't think there was more than 6.
Yeah.
So I think the meta shifted enough, and that there's just a lot of people just went with higher AP shots. The Aries bomb isn't as effective as people thought it was going to be. We got some nice strats, but I kind of explained it this way to a lot of people. Like we were kind of like the CP star POWs kind of coming out of the dungeon of like and like getting all these like 8th edition scraps like right before 9th edition came out, and like we're all excited about it, because it's like it's like we've never had this before, but it was just kind of like the kitchen scraps of Space Marine 8th edition that was about to get changed, so like as much as it was great, and it's been great having all that CP and those strats and stuff, which has really helped, I think there was a sort of a swell there that didn't quite connect. I think enough people hadn't been playing Adeptus Custodes, in that 8th edition time span that, there was some initial success here and there as people were kind of caught off guard by the new tricks.
Yeah.
But I think, once the meta kind of corrected itself and Harlequin players now had a few tournaments under their belt with their new stuff.
Yeah.
I think, and then like with the coming of Eradicators and that whole thing, I think a lot of people now just kind of went looking back to the Custodes footless and going, I can't compete. I can't compete with White Scars doing flat 2 damage coming in. I can't compete with, these alpha striking Eradicators, or even just walking up the field, being able to shoot 6 melta shots at me for 120 points, five turn, for just that, for 5 turns in a row, because I'm going to get kited because they're assault weapons, and he can just run in the other direction now, before smash hammering me with his, his bomb or whatever.
3 wound Terminators now.
Yeah, I guess Terminators. The guy who got second played Black Templars. I really wanted to play him, but he played a big Terminator bomb, which I heard was really effective. So I'm kind of interested to see how that's going to pan out, with having D3 damage and stuff, and because we still have a little bit of an edge over the flat 2 damage stuff being D3 damage, especially with a bike captain. It's still pretty good being able to re-roll those damage rolls. Those 3 damage can still come up. And if you're Virtus Praetors, you're playing Virtus Praetors, you get a lot of attacks and you're almost always getting a charge off. So getting a lot of, 3 damage shots through is not necessarily statistically bad, with re-rolling wounds and stuff. But,
So that's a great segue then. One of the things that we got in this flurry of FAQs that just came out today, of course, which hotly anticipated, was we also got our storm shields changed.
Oh,
so that
really?
so that effectively now our storm shields are still 3-up invulns for our guardians, but
Right.
now they give us +1 save as well. So we're on a 1-up technically,
That's awesome.
like a 0-up in cover.
Yeah.
So
Neg two,
do
ignore
you
neg two, basically.
exactly, so kind of basically like ignoring AP1 and possibly 2. Do you
Yep.
think we're gonna see a whole bunch of shield guardian spammy type, just hold the table type lists coming up, or
No, I don't. I don't think so. Because I think the demon army is also coming up in the meta. Um, for at Circle City, there was a guy who played a very strong demon list, or like a monster demon list. He ran into some bad matchups. I mean, this is not the only example, but the example that I witnessed that caused a stir. Like, people were like, "This is a great list. I want to play this." Um, I don't think demons have gone anywhere, and so I think and I think Thousand Sons, are kind of anticipating getting some similar buffs that the Marines got, and I think the counter to that is going to be wound spam,
yeah,
mortal wound spam. And like, as much as a nerf as they took, not being able to just Brotherhood Psyker on fives across the board now, I've found that they can still put enough of an output. Like, some of those Thousand Sun armies can consistently do like 12, 15 mortal wounds in a turn.
yeah,
You um, and then you throw into like these big units of Zangors and stuff like that, just dish out so many attacks. I don't think it's going to be dominant. I'm not saying it's not playable. I think you definitely play it. I think it's got play, but I don't think it's so. I don't think it's going to be like. I don't think every Custodes player is looking at that list going, This is the way." Like, this is the next meta. I think Custodes is in a good spot right now, in the sense that like there's a lot of combinations that you can use that have a lot of play. That you can really mix and match and not really go wrong with Custodes right now. But I do think you do need a more balanced approach. But even that, like, not to say like you can win a lot of games with that army. There's a lot of armies, a lot of matchups you'll go against, and if you're a smart player, you can definitely max your primaries consistently. You can definitely get 15 primary pretty easily on While We Stand We Fight. Is a pretty easy secondary to score with that, especially if you take Aquilon Shield, and the half damage Warlord trait, and the super Storm Shield that gives -1 to wound.
yeah.
And then the +2 wounds. You throw all that on a character, like,
That guy's not
he's
dying.
gonna live. He's gonna live, like, and then you have, maybe a Bite Captain just to have a little bit of reach, but still just hovering around the. Maybe having a buried salvo launcher might be nice, just to pick up a couple of things. But 3-up invul, still 7 wounds. You can't get at him as long as he's hunkered behind a big storm shield blob. Yeah, I mean, it's got play. You definitely can consistently score 70 plus points with an army like that. But as far as like winning big, like going big, I think. I think you're definitely going to have to get lucky with your matchups, because I think there are some lists that would, played right, would really be tough to handle. I mean, you'd say the same thing about any army, but
Yeah, I think something we've been trying to preach is that people need to try and play a bit more balanced. I think in general, in ninth, just in general, but like it seems like the spammy doesn't quite work as well as it used to in eighth, and I think that applies to us as well as as many factions actually. It's more about balance. You need to hold, but you need to kill, and it's actually quite ingenious how ninth has turned out that way. I don't know if it's intentional. It probably was intentional, or how they actually did it, to my mind, but they've made it so that spamming things is not necessarily that effective. And
yeah. I appreciate that. I really do. I think a lot of people appreciate that. There's just, especially people who enjoy the competition of it and the competitive scene, because it is kind of a derision against the art of it, the sort of the art of war of it, where it's just like, no, I'm just going to choose this one unit and just slap them all together and just throw them all on the table, and just like, there's not a lot of thinking in it. and to me, that is kind of a derision against, competitive players who really do spend a lot of time crafting their list and doing research on other armies and really trying to figure out what are the efficiencies that I can get the most out of, and what are the different plays that I can make and what are the variety of, tools that I'm going to have to deal with. And, spam people who just spam these spam, they're not thinking about that. I'm not saying like I said, the all shield list, like, it's got play to it, it's got some play to it, but it is very one dimensional. It's very one dimensional. And I don't think you're really going to improve too much as a player playing a list where you pretty much know, regardless of who you're going to play, what you're going to do 100% of the time. And it's just, to me, it's like, why even bother playing at that point? And when you're basically just testing the odds of your army against whatever output it may bring against you. It just kind of seems like it's a little bit of a derision.
It's just a math exercise.
Yeah. I mean, but not even that. Like, you don't have to calculate what the odds are your army's going to win. You've already just sort of set everything, all of that aside. And I can get why it was done. It was kind of done out of the exasperation of Iron Hands. I think, so I think, now that GW is kind of trying to even things out and make things more balanced, I think people, like you said, people are just less inclined to play spam, partly because it's less effective now, but also because I think people are just they're feeling like GW is actually trying to make the game competitive in a way that's healthy for the community and not, because the spam thing's been a problem for a long time. I remember issues of spam back in 4th and 5th edition. I remember when the Imperial armor list came out, or where it was just like all tanks, where Imperial Guard could play all tanks for the first time.
Yeah.
It was such a nightmare.
Yeah.
For everybody, because it was just so arbitrary, and just really sucked the fun out of the game, because it does affect both ways, when you're playing a list that's all spam, there's also a sense of like, well, what am I going to do? Well, I just got to kill that thing one at a time, I'm eating an elephant here. Like, there's no, theory behind it. I just need to see how many of these things I can kill in this short space of time. Just 2.5 hours of space. So
yeah. And I don't think that we have to play that way right now, because we have so many good units, as you said, so many different combos. I mean, so, you're on talking about almost, bikes and vehicles. We've had people come on, talk about all vehicle lists. I play a lot of foot lists. Like, we have so many different ways of playing that are all effective. You don't need to play that way anymore. We needed to back at the heyday of, Broviathan. Like, the only way you could survive was spamming 3-up invulns, right? And Bridger kind of showed that at LVO. Is like, this, I managed to win because I was just spamming 3-up invulns.
Yeah.
And he's the first to admit that it's not fun, and it's like, it was like a necessity at the time. But we certainly don't need to play that way anymore.
I'm thankful for that, yeah. Yep, I am thankful for that. And that was partly the same with my tank list, that I played. It was all tanks, because I had to maximize a certain efficiency. So, like, I'm not like, it's a little bit less spammy in the sense that, like, there's a lot more maneuver, involved, and, like, you really do have to prioritize targets and stuff. So there's a little bit more, but like I said, I'm guilty too of that to a certain degree. So I'm thankful for 9th edition, and that we have, like I said, I got back into the game for Virtus Praetors, and it really sucked for me sitting down going, kind of vested myself in this competitive arena now. This is the first time getting into ITC. Like, I grew up in North Dakota, in a little small town of Minot, North Dakota, and so there's one shop in town, and, like, so ITC, like, I'm getting invested, and I got it. Like I said, I kind of got back into it for Virtus Praetors, but it really, really was tough to go, 2 Virtus Praetors, 8 wounds, toughness 6. He's not going to survive against Iron Hands or Knights better than 14 wounds, toughness 7. It's just, that was the calculation. So it was like, I don't have a lot of options if I want to play competitively. I have to sort of try to maximize every little, kind of advantage like that to the best that I can, And I think that yeah, that definitely made the meta kind of sick for a while, and
Yeah.
I'm thankful we kind of got over that now. And like you
Yeah.
said, there's so much play now. All the units have a place, I think for the most part. But it's, we have enough tools at our disposal that I think we can adapt
Can
to the
adapt.
coming changes in the meta and just make
Yeah.
some changes here and there little by little as we go. I'm kind of at that point already. I kind of anticipate some stuff. Like I said, I don't really plan on changing anything in my list. I'm kind of at that point of like, how do I use this list at this point to kind of defeat some of these super, units that are going to be stomping around for a while.
So that's a beautiful segue onto our final section here. So the meta is about to change.
Yep.
Well, it's still going to be Marines, but different kind of Marines. We're
Yep.
about to see a bunch of stupid Invader ATVs. We're going to see undoubtedly 12 to 18 Eradicators in some lists. We're about to see no more Aggressors, thankfully. We're about to see bricks of like 10 heavy intercessors. We're about to see all sorts of things like that.
Yep.
We're about to see Deathwing Knights who have auto on all the time transhuman for free.
Yep.
We're about to see Necrons. I bet you we're going to see 120 warrior lists. We're going to see hard hitting, hard shooting guys. We're going to see that stupid Satan who negates invulns and and turns everything off. We're going to see all sorts of new stuff that we've not seen before.
Yep.
What's got you the most scared out of all these new huge super threats that we're slowly being introduced to?
Yeah. Well, as a Custodes player, right, I can't technically be afraid of these things.
But we can still feel morale.
Yeah. Right. I guess the things that I've just been preparing for the most have been the Eradicators. I don't know, because I try to keep kind of one event in mind at a time.
Yeah.
So, I just, Iron Halo wasn't too long ago, and I still been kind of just ruminating on some of the lessons that I learned back then, but and trying to track the trajectories, and figuring out how people are gonna, shift their lists. And yes, there's a lot of like big lists out there that that we haven't seen yet, but I think the equation ultimately ends up being the same. I've beaten lists that have had 9 Eradicators in them. So if the list has 3 more Eradicators in them, like I kind of already have a sense of being able to beat that. I played orc armies that have had 120 orc boys in it, so I kind of have already a grasp of like how to beat a horde army. There's definitely going to be some dynamics to get used to, but like the fundamentals aren't going to change. Like Necrons, you're going to want to kill every model in a unit. That's going to be still pretty standard, I think, unless something changes that I'm not aware of yet. Like I don't know, man. Like it's tough to really anticipate. I kind of said this earlier. I'm kind of beyond the apprehension of it, and I just for my own
Just roll with it.
mind, baby. I guess I remember being like that when I first got in. Like I remember Iron Hands. During Iron Hands, I was like that. I just was just sweating bullets about this, that, or the other, and maybe that's one of the advantages of having the success, of finally kind of seeing some of the hard work come to fruition, and just having that benefit of confidence of like, the things that I've seen or played against or not, or beat, in times past, are sort of growing narrower and narrower in their margins. So I think it's a little bit easier for me just because I've invested so much, especially in the 8th edition and early 9th edition, of just my time and practice, and I think it's just
Yeah. Yeah.
it's just a little bit less of a thing. Like I don't expect to be surprised, I guess, as much as I would have expected 6 months ago, or a year ago.
Yeah. And I think our book allows us to to have the confidence that we do have tools
Right.
Whereas before we didn't, right? Like something beats us, it just beats us. Like it
Yep.
was like there's
Yep.
nothing you can do. You just lost.
Yeah. Well, and that exactly, and like having taken the knocks of like having pushed through the Iron Hands meta, like is even you know you kind of face those defeats with a little bit more of a grain of salt and a little bit less of an apprehension.
Yeah.
You know, of like you know this is gonna be tough, but I'm gonna get through it. I'm gonna learn something from it. I'm gonna move on to my next match. You know, and not let it get to you, and not let it like be something keeping you up at night. You know, keeping that keeping keeping that 2 CP for the Slayer of Nightmares. You know, when the meta changes. You know,
Two
yeah. I
CP
mean,
should be one
I
CP.
yeah. I mean, like, there's going to be so much. There's going to be so many new armies, you know, coming out with so many new things. I mean, as many changes as came down for the strats and stuff. I guess like some maybe some more granular things that came to mind. You know, the grav bomb's not going to be a thing anymore.
Yeah.
So Emperor's Auspice, you know, used to be kind of like the cancel of that. Um, that's not really a thing anymore. So, you know, that's going to change a lot. You know, for me, I think it's just really going to be. I know this doesn't really quite answer your question, but for me, like what I've been leaning into working on is really trying to figure out what's the best way to establish a kill more rhythm with reserves in those turn 2, turn 3 against lists that have, excuse me, like you said, 18 eradicators in it. You know, and how do I hit those eradicators before they hit me? You know, and how to hit them effectively so they're not hitting me back as effectively. You know, so that's a big thing for me. Like, I'm not too worried about Necrons. I don't think enough of the play style has changed that I feel like I'm going to have to make significant changes. I think it's just going to be more or less kind of keeping to the fundamentals, kill everything in one unit. You know, target obviously characters where you can. You know, big stuff. You know that you can target. You know, my list is very much designed to do that. You know, with all the salvo launchers and stuff. Like I don't. You know, monster mash, big walking stuff like that. Even just taking out smaller characters, it's a good list to do it. You know, with the Virtus Prayers, being able to fly over things.
Yep.
You know, I've done a lot of sniping of Judicars, so you know, Judicars have been a bit of an issue.
Yep.
You know, because especially with just one unit of Virtus Praetors.
Yep.
You know, because he can just go, you fight last, and now I'm fighting.
Yep.
You know, 9 Blade Guard, who are all hitting pretty hard. But it's nice to be able to just jump over the unit, get really close to his Judicar, shoot him with a bunch of salvo launchers, and then charge his Blade Guard. You know, problem solved. You know, can't problem solved. You know, you can't do that with Alaris. I mean, you can snipe him with Alaris, I guess, but you know, if he fences your, you know, there's a lot of ways. There's a lot more ways to counter a deep strike than there are to counter just sheer movement. You know, especially when they're coming at you. You know, like you can fence a deep strike pretty solidly, even while moving up the field. But it's really, really hard to simultaneously move close to an opponent, but then fence in such a way that prevents you from
jumping over. Yeah,
that unit jumping over and getting at those characters that are kind of going, especially when they're trying to advance and you know, that the car ends up lagging. You know, it becomes an issue. And then if he has to lag, I'm shooting with salvo launchers, you know, eating through those 4-up invols, and at that point it doesn't matter. You can tell me to fight last, it's fine. I have 7 Virtus Praetors, you're 2.5, you know, Blade Guard at this point, plus your Judiciar. So it's so to me it's just it's going to be just really trying to hone what I got. I like what I got. I like being able to you know, jump over tanks with the stooping dive. I ran into some issues early in 9th against alpha striking White Scar Sense, you know, being able to, with that +2 to charge from Psyker or whatever, get into my tanks. And I was really trying to figure out how to counter that. And I really tried to figure out what the best way to do that. And I tried thinking through Tanglefoot and stuff, but to me, the best way to counter that, because Tanglefoot, the issue with Tanglefoot is that I try to put a model behind a tank, you know, so that when the tank is charged, he can throw it, you know, Tanglefoot and kind of get that last 2 inches that'll keep him out of charge range. But the problem is the tank is like just a little bit more than 3 inches wide. So, so if I remember right, I have to look at the rules again. I'm blanking out here, but Tanglefoot has to be within a certain range, doesn't it?
12 inch.
Yeah, 12 inches. So he's outside of the 12 inches at that point, so he can't technically Tanglefoot on behalf of the tank because he'd be like at 12.1 or 12.5, something like that.
Yeah.
But the nice thing about stooping dive is that I can put I can fence the deep strike with the tanks, still get the neg 2 buff. If he gets there, I can stooping dive that 5 or 6 inch charge over the tank, depending on how big the unit is that's charging, and so on and so forth. And then obviously too, that's another reason why I cut the unit in half, because with 7 it was really hard to keep
Get
coherency.
them all in. Yeah.
So, it ended up having to be like an 8 or 9 inch charge to be able to get all the Virtus Praetors from one side of the tank to the other side of the tank.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess I'm more focused on the fundamentals of just the different kind of more general armies styles of play, and then just learning more of those fine tunes. Stooping dive I've only used it a few times, but it's got such great possibilities, as a play. And like I said, I really like the Virtus Praetor, so that's kind of where I've been sinking my teeth as far as just trying to figure out how to just become super pro, and how to use that to kill things like eradicators, kill things like Necrons, and how do I make that more efficient? Because to me, it's better than fight twice, honestly. Fight twice can be redundant at times, but stooping dive, a charge in your opponent's fight phase, charge phase, like it's nice. Got a lot more play. You get a lot more movement out of that.
Yep.
It's much more of a threat as far as a counter maneuver, because you don't have to get charged. Like there's been a lot of times, a couple of times I've used it, he just ended up within charge range in his turn. He moved, he was within charge range, maybe he didn't want to charge, but then here I am to stooping dive. So it prevents maneuver. It sort of fences objectives really good, right? So if you have a unit of Virtus Praetors on objectives, your opponent knows he can't just move into rapid fire range, or 9 inches, or without having to charge. And if he fails that charge, depending on if he rolls really bad, I guess it's after the charges are declared. Now that I'm thinking about it, so he would. A lot of play there. I'm looking forward to seeing. What's going to come for the Custodes. Honestly, I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the Imperial armor. Coming up, I think that's probably going to affect
what we
my
play.
style of play more than anything else. I'm not really super concerned about what's going down, other than just kind of the general hype. Obviously I'm looking out for things that are really coming up on people's radars. But
okay, so guys in the Twitch, if you have questions, post them up. I'm going to ask questions that were asked on the Discord. So we answered most of these already. So one of the popular question is, how are we going to deal with this Nightbringer Satan, who can only take 3 damage a phase, can heal like 1 or 2 of them, ignores invulns, and does like flat 3 or flat 4 damage, and has like a whole bunch of attacks, like 6 or 7 attacks. I think you just have to survive and hit him 3 times in 3 phases. I don't know if there's any secret tech to it, to be honest.
That is why I prefer a faster army, because models like that can only be in one spot at a time. And I played a really strong Gazgul centered list with kind of a similar issue.
Yeah, because you can only do max damage to him too.
Exactly, and it is per phase. Is that correct for the Nightbringer?
Yeah, per phase. Yeah.
Yeah. So another reason why I prefer the so I did manage to kill Gazgul, but I had to time it right, because basically what you have to do is you have to Gas was a little bit tough because Gas could get healed too, but you have to time it right to do those 3 damage, 4 damage Because he's got how many wounds? How many wounds does Catan have?
I think it's only got 9, so you have 3 phases of 3
Yeah,
damage and no healing.
yeah, yeah. So usually, I mean, you got to get some of that off in the shooting phase, and then you have to have a shooting phase plus a combat phase. Basically, is the
Yeah.
most efficient way to do that. I found it's with Virtus Praetors and the
Tanks.
tanks. You know, because you can clear those screens fairly effectively. You know, because it's going to have to be a centralized screen. You know, he can't put all his army around it without losing objectives. You know, if your army if he kind of cloisters and you're playing fast, you can pick up those primary points on the flanks and keep shooting the whole time. You know, you can't really. It's harder to do that with an infantry army effectively. And then at some point you have to whittle down the screen and mass hit him hard in that first shooting phase. Right.
So apparently he can't. He doesn't get the character protection.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I think it's just a case of some long range firepower and just whittle him before he gets to you. I don't know.
Yeah. It's pretty much you want to hit him at least once, and then you have to line up. You have to line up an effective shooting, then charge into him to kill him.
Yeah.
I guess avoid any possible fight first dynamics that they might have coming up. I'm not really privy to anything new in the Necron army, but that's how I killed Gaz. Was I initially shot him with the Aries gunship, and then I found out that was a mistake because he could just heal him, and it was kind of a waste. And but then once I whittled down all the orc boys around him, I ended up sending. That was when I played that was one of the games where the Storm Shield guys really did kind of come into play because I deep struck them in with the Lock Warden guy, and I was able to surround him. And then before I did that, I shot him, and then I was obviously he wasn't able to heal him at that point, and was able to with those 2 units, the Alaris captain and the guys with the. But yeah, I mean, this guy poses a different problem with the turning off involts. That would not work on him particularly.
minus 4 AP, no invuln saves.
Yeah. So I wouldn't be sending infantry really against him at all. I would hit him with. I'd probably hit him with the Ares gunship once, and then or something. Any of my stuff, any of the salvo launcher, any of the tanks, I'd hit him with something. Try to knock out those wounds. What is the healing dynamic on him?
Well, he gets like auto 1 back in the command phase because of living metal or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think somebody has an ability to increase that to
heal
2
as well.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'd probably just shoot him for 2 turns then, and try to knock off. Because if you can only do 3 a turn, so you'd want to get 3 wounds off before you made that sort of final charge move.
Yeah.
So if you shoot him first turn and he heals 2 wounds back, he's got 1 left. It might take 3 turns to then prep that, but
sounds like a pain.
yeah, it's definitely a pain. But like I said, I'd feel most comfortable playing the list that I got right now against that kind of dynamic because I did anticipate fighting Gaz, and it is, like I said, it is one of the things that I really kind of figured out and figured Virtus Praetors and tanks were the best way to defeat a Gaz infantry orc army. So I imagine it would be similar. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting to do some reading and figure out maybe what the would they play more infantry centric or would it be more with that model. I don't know what kind of buffs and stuff he gives.
Yeah.
If he's just kind of a floating like.
All right. We'll move on to the next question. Is how do you think we're going to be affected by the core mechanism? It seems like Marines didn't get affected too much. So do you think it's going to be similar for everybody? I mean, Necron's only got 4 units that are core.
Yeah, I think it will be similar, but I mean, similar it's kind of a misnomer because they have 100 data sheets, right? We have 12 or 8 or 15 or whatever. I mean, my list will be, I think, more affected than a lot of people's, more foot-centric armies, definitely, because I play 2 Caladius and an Aries. I think those things, I would be surprised if they got core. I'd be surprised if Virtus Praetors didn't get core. So,
Yeah.
um,
I
so
guess we'll
I
see
don't.
when the Forge World book comes out. It should have core in
Yeah.
there,
Yep. Yep.
probably, if there's going to be a core.
Yep. Overall, I think we'll be affected less just because we have ballistic skill 2, weapon skill 2 across the board.
Yeah.
I think the big nerf was no more chapter rerolls, for everybody. So there's a lot of guys, characters, especially now that are, the smash chaplain with the flat 4 damage, flat 5 damage. If your white scars is just a little bit is significantly less scary now that he doesn't benefit as far as I know. I mean, I know some of the auras are now characters and core, like you said.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting to see if that affects that. But I think some of that stuff will be a little bit significantly less scary than just custode captains not getting reroll ones anymore.
Yeah. It's not as big a deal for us.
Yeah, it's not really. I mean, and you can throw in, champion or victor of the blood games, and still get one of those rerolls back, and pretty close to average the same, anyways. So it's not like we're really losing too much there. But like I said, I think my list would suffer the most, and honestly, a lower list like the one I play, just more tanks, I think would suffer a little bit. But since 9th, I've played a lot more asymmetrically, and a lot of times I'm only really buffing one tank anyways.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll corner one tank to kind of try to draw off, certain units, and then I'll heavy deploy on the other side. So I've kind of, and the Aries gunship oftentimes is flying around on
Yeah,
its
it's
own.
just flying around. Yeah, exactly.
So even my list, I don't expect it to make a huge difference, but a nerf is a nerf, so
Yeah.
you're
Okay.
always going to remember that when you're playing that game and go, I can't reroll ones anymore.
Yeah.
I really needed that reroll to go through,
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that you always pick Linebreaker and grind them down.
Yep.
What's a lot of people struggle with the secondaries,
Yep.
and other than the advice I usually give people, which is you kind of have to build to get at least 2 secondaries. What's
Yep.
your typical third secondary? Is that really based on what your opponent brings?
Absolutely, yeah. So I've done, a lot of guys have a lot of good advice about secondaries, out there. But I do think that there needs to be an emphasis on playing consistently to your list. So I think when you build your army, you should try to get at least 2 secondaries that you're going to literally play every game.
Yeah.
That are your go-tos, that you've designed your army around, so you have a battle plan, and you roll with it, and you know that you can max those points. You have the ability to max those points. And then that third one you leave open to what your army is playing. So what army you're playing, or what army your opponent is playing. So for me, and then even that though, there should be some kind of spectrum.
Yeah.
As to what, so you're not just like going through all 18 secondary or whatever it is, and plus the mission specific one, and trying to figure out like trying to calculate and use up brain power to figure something out you could have thought of. But the ones that I go with are bring it down, Titan Slayer, obviously, assassinate, abhor the witch, and teleport Homer. Those are the only other ones that I will take, that I even have to think about. So I basically just cut the list of secondaries down to that, and it's pretty much I'm only thinking about one secondary to try to figure out in those opening deployment time, and it really helps just keep my mind space clear and focus on other things that I should be thinking about during that time. My target priority stuff, and trying to figure out how to off balance my opponent and try to with that kind of asymmetric deployment that I like to play with. So it's just really easy then to just kind of go, okay, does he have 4 characters, 5 characters? Well, I'm going with assassinate. Does he have 5 vehicles? Okay, I'm going with bring it down. Does he have, and then so I already have in my mind, so that calculation is just like that. Like I look at the list, okay, I know which one I'm going to take, and then if there's nothing good, I kind of then have my sort of Alamo secondary, which is teleport Homer. So I have my Alaris captain, and I have those 3 guard, but it's and it is a 12-point secondary that I can score deep striking them. but it's not ideal for a few reasons because it kind of skylines that unit now because now they're potentially scoring 27 points, by themselves in the backfield. So usually that's enough for an opponent to sort of draw some attention.
Yeah.
Which is kind of goes against the point of taking a small unit like that to run the line breaker. Now the advantage to playing that as an asymmetry to my more maneuverable fast army is that more often than not by turn 3 my Virtus Praetors and my bike captain are in position to take line breaker points themselves. So which is nice. So I have kind of a dovetail into that so that if they do get targeted, as long as they survive turn 2, by turn 3 I'm good, and then I'm still scoring max on that line breaker. But with Teleport Homer, it becomes really conspicuous because it can only be infantry guys, so it's going to be those 4 models.
Yeah.
they can't do anything,
Yeah.
So the whole like Lock Warden and the like it feels like a little bit of a waste. I like sending my Lock Warden after to go character hunting or to go after those small units because that's it's epic. Like it's just kind of a downer as a Custodes player to be like, here's my epic Alaris captain sitting in the backfield tinkering with a flippin' teleport homer,
and
while
your
they're
Pyrothite spears
teleported in, like they already arrived. What are you doing with the teleport homer, bro? Like, it's kind of like a PFC moment. Like, what are you doing? I'm scoring 12 secondary points, sir. So like I said, that's kind of my Alamo. Like if I'm looking at a list and he's got 2 characters and 2 tanks, and it's like the most I can score is like 6 points on that 3rd secondary. It's kind of my Alamo. I'll go, okay, fine. I'll go with a teleport homer, but more often than not, it's bring it down, assassinate, Titan Hunter, or Abhor the Witch. One of those ones, like 80% of the lists that I fight is going to be one of those ones. Generally speaking, I'll take a 9-point character list over trying to get 12 points with teleport homer. Like it's not worth 3 points for the consistency that I'm going to get with assassinate. And I like assassinate because it does create a sense in which you want to guard your characters. As soon as that one is taken, like I like putting that pressure on my opponent, knowing that he's going to play a little bit more guarded with his characters, which is going to stimmy his advance just enough, and it's going to really help me then kind of control the maneuver and control the the center of the board and control the kind of the kill more rhythm a little bit better when he's just a little bit less aggressive with his force towards me.
Yeah.
It's a little bit. It's so much easier than for me to just capitalize on all of those things and really control those things from the get go. So like I said, teleport homer is like it's literally the last resort, and it's usually like if I look at the list and go, okay, there's and it almost has to be a guarantee that I'm going to get it. Like if I look like if we're playing like the Dawn of War style of deployment, and I know he's going to play cagey, and he doesn't have vehicles and characters, like maybe then I'll make that go for that. But more often than not, it's going to be one of those other ones for that 3rd secondary.
All right. And final question we have on the floor here. What are your thoughts on Sagittarium?
I like him in theory. The one guy, both times I lost to Custodes, they actually turned out to do really well for them against my list. They were very much a nuisance as far as holding primaries. And that was one of the games where they really used the terrain against my Telemon, my deep striking Telemon. I think I found out actually during that game that they can fire both their primary and secondary weapon, which I thought was really cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they're like combi weapons.
Yeah. So I thought that was really, really neat, really good. If I would play them, I would definitely play them as a deep strike. I think they can definitely serve to be a nice counter for Eradicator spam if you take 10 of them and put them in deep strike and time it so that you're coming in after him if he deep strikes his stuff, or just waiting for him to set up and then dropping your 10-man unit of Sagittarium in front of his Eradicators and blasting them off the face of the earth.
You'd have to take 2 5-mans because they're maxed out at 5.
Oh, they're maxed at 5, huh?
Yeah.
That is good to know. Same concept, but yes, you'll spend 3 CP instead of, you're probably better taking 10 Pyrothites because you can take, is it 6?
6 Pyrothites, yeah.
6 Pyrothites. You might be might run them that combo, I guess, Pyrothite Sagittarium, if you want to do like a sort of a counter to that Alpha Strike or a similar one of your own. I still swear on the Praetors. The salvo launchers I think are as consistent. With 6-man units now, though, like there might be more play now in those 5 and 6-man units. The 5 Sagittarium or the six Pyrothites to wait and then drop them in. Do RQ tech munitions where you're getting 2d6 take the highest, getting those flat 3 damage shots, going straight through their armor. You can do a lot of damage to a 6-man unit of Eradicators with that as kind of a punch or a counter punch.
They're kind of like our own Eradicators.
Yeah,
except cost way more.
except not even as close, as good as shooting, but they're precise enough with their 2-up ballistic skill, right? And you can deep strike an Alaris Captain with them. So if you don't finish them off and you get really hard counter punch, you at least got an Alaris Captain there that's going in for the the combat kill, potentially, or a bike captain. I like the Alaris Captain because you're not spending that CP. So if you just have the 1 CP you're spending, I mean, even just Alaris, I think still are good as a counter to that. But yes, back to Sagittarium. I'm wandering here. I think they have great play. I think they're good little units for those infantry purposes. Like I said, I'm not an infantry guy, honestly. Like the 4 infantry that I play are all the custodian infantry that I have assembled and I've ever played with. So I'm not really the guy to ask.
Revealed.
Players out there who have tons more experience than I do. I'm definitely a tank versus Praetor expert. As my particular field or special Custodes specialty. So, but yes, on paper, as I've seen them played, I think they definitely are worth the points. They're good for their points. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks very much, Ryan, for joining me tonight and chatting. And I always want to get people, because it's an echo chamber of people just constantly listening to me all the time. I always want to get people with different perspectives, different lists, different play styles to talk about what they do. And you certainly present a very different play style and list building to what we have in our sort of what is quote unquote like standard or whatever you want to call it. So really appreciate you coming on and sharing that with us tonight.
Yeah, me too. I'm glad I could help and get that side out there. And thanks again for having me. And it's been great.
Yeah, so thanks very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you for joining and following and subscribing. Thank you to our patrons. Thanks to the members of the Discord chat. And we'll see you tomorrow night, where I think I'm going to be joined by Jeremiah Pettit, otherwise known as Battle Juice on the Discord. And we're going to talk about Custodes and Marines in more detail. So join us tomorrow night at 9 p.m. And thanks very much, Ryan. And we'll see everybody later.